And I think, Adam, if I can start with you, we talked about data centers last year. We talked about it being an emerging trend. I know as a result of the work that you did last year and the transactions that you were involved with, you've probably learned a lot more about the difficulties involved with finding data center sites. Can you share some of your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this last year. I think sort of data centers have only really become a thing in Thailand probably in the last 2 or 3 years. And prior to that, really, there wasn't a data center sector at all. We're seeing, or CBRE is seeing a lot of inquiries from data centers. I think we can probably split them into 2 parts. We have data center operators, and then we have the hyperscaler cloud providers, the large, very well-known ones, the Microsofts, the Googles, the AWS, the Alibabas. I think what we're seeing is that they are starting to look for land, they're discussing it, but what we're finding particularly is it's taking a long time to do. I think the requirements that these companies have for a data center are very, very specific. They have specific shape, they have specific power requirements, specific, obviously not being in flood zones and issues like that. So I think it is taking time, and we're learning all the time as we're going along. And we have to understand that and try to make sure the market understands that in order to try to secure these sites for these companies.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we've discussed, that from actually getting a requirement to doing due diligence to acquiring land for actually a data center to be operational will be a couple of years at least.
Yeah, I think we've been working with some companies for 2 or 3 years now, and some of them are still not actually concluded any kind of transactions or actually acquired land to build their data center. I think what we've seen is that the due diligence period that these companies need to do all the testing they need, to soil test, to check for contamination, to speak to the telco providers in terms of Wi-Fi and wireless and fiber optic cabling, takes a long time. I think most of the data center companies we're speaking to are taking from 4 to 6 months to do this due diligence period. And it's a little bit of a challenge for the market, and it's new for the market. Most landlords in Thailand, whether they're professional landlords and this is all they do, or whether it's just family-owned land, often they don't understand this process, and their goal is to just sell their land. So I think what we're finding is we're having to work in the market and work with the data center providers to make sure they understand the concept of the local market and how the local market is, but also work with the local landowners and developers to sort of try to make them understand the requirements that these data centers have. So it's really a learning process, and it's not quick, but we're getting there, and some data center companies have already moved into the market, and there's a lot of other ones who are in the process of.
Okay, well, I think maybe that also leads us on to our next thing, because you talked about infrastructure, and one of the big government initiatives that's been talked about in the industrial sector for a long time is the EEC. From your perspective, what progress has been made?
Yeah, I think the EEC was a government initiative. The EEC stands for the Eastern Economic Corridor, which is Rayong, Chonburi and Chachoengsao province. Excuse me. This area has been an industrial area for a long time, and is previously or always has been sort of the hub of the automotive industry. I think sort of in the last 5 to 10 years, the government have announced the EEC initiative with the aim of perhaps attracting different types of investors, not just the auto industry, and perhaps try to move up to more high tech, away from sort of the I don't want to say the auto industry is not high tech, but to some of the more modern sort of medical and things like that. And to do that, they've gone to do a lot of infrastructure programs. So from the infrastructure side, they're increasing the capacity and size of Lam Chabang, which is the general industrial port. They're increasing the size of Mata Phut, deep sea port, which is the petrochemical port. They've obviously got the plan for the high-speed train, which runs from obviously the airports in Bangkok down to Rayong and Utapao, which the airport down there they want to expand as well. And also the road infrastructure, which for someone like myself who spends a lot of my time in the area, it's really been the most noticeable improvement. Getting around, the congestion, even though there's far more manufacturers and logistics down there, the road improvement has been to such a a good level and so well done that actually it's far easier getting around from the deep sea port to the manufacturing sites than it was 10 years ago. So from that perspective, it's been very successful.
So I think this is one of the highlights for Thailand, that its infrastructure is very good. What are the government doing on the incentive side with the Board of Investment to help attract business? Yeah,
I think it's obviously a total package. You have the infrastructure and all of that comes under the EEC. So you have the infrastructure improvements, but then you have the Board of Investment, which is really often the first port of call sometimes for a new investor coming into Thailand, and they contact the BOI or the Board of Investment to learn what kind of promotions they can get, both tax and non-tax. So the BOI have done a very good job of promoting this. They obviously go on road shows with some of the big developers into China, into Japan, into South Korea, to tell the investors there what's on offer. And they've done a very good job. And Thailand is particularly lucky because we have a number of very strong industrial estate developers. We have well-known ones like WHA, Amata, Rojana, who have been doing this a long time. They develop very good industrial estates and they manage them once they're complete alongside the IEAT very well. And they don't just develop in Thailand, they obviously develop in China, and I think Amata and WHA are both in Vietnam. So they have that reputation in multiple countries, which again is good for attracting investment.
So I think maybe one of the last things to touch on is that in terms of what new businesses we think will come in and trends to watch for 2023 in terms of which sectors are most interesting.
Yeah, I think in 2022 I think we've had a very good year. The land sales numbers on the EEC particularly have been very good. But in 2022 we've seen really across all sectors. It's not just been the auto industry, it's not just been petrol, EV or anything like that. It's been across all sectors and all countries. Alongside the government's EEC initiative, Thailand's in a little bit of a sweet spot in the moment about what's going on in the rest of the world, some conflicts and some political issues. Thailand's a very well placed. It's attractive. It's a fairly neutral. It's been doing industrial estates for a long time. And I think in 2023, we're going to see a continuation of 2022. I think we will see investment coming from a lot of areas. I don't think it'll be concentrated on one particular industry. I think we're probably still dominant in the auto sector, but I think maybe that dominance will move from traditional auto suppliers and parts, maybe particularly if some of the big EV cars who have acquired land start to develop, we're going to see sort of maybe more of the component manufacturers, the suppliers to the EV side. And also I think we're looking particularly or seeing a lot of interest around semiconductors. Semiconductors and microchips and around those kind of industries, we're starting to see a lot of inquiries. So we're hopeful for that sector as well.
And I think you mentioned that some industries are looking not so much to buy land, but they actually want to take over facilities so that they can get their manufacturing process started much more quickly.
Yeah, certainly, particularly actually semiconductor companies. We've had a lot of interest for brownfield sites, which they can, brownfield buildings, so second-hand factories, which they can buy, reposition and start up manufacturing essentially a lot quicker than they can if they have to buy greenfield. And do it from that. But one of the things we're struggling with at the moment, and it's not just on a second-hand factory or brownfield sites, is that looking forward, we're getting a lot of demand. There's a lot of companies who want to come to Thailand, who want to invest in Thailand, but we have to make sure that we have the
land in the right places.
Land in the right places, developed land, good quality land, well-shaped land, and obviously well-run industrial estates to offer them. So I think the government bodies and the very capable developers have to work together to make sure that there is enough land, that the raw land, the farming land potentially, which it was before, is brought through the EIA process, the planning process, in the most efficient way, so we have sufficient good quality land plots to offer these investors.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I think it sounds like you're going to have a busy and interesting year.
Thank you. Hopefully.